What's up, people? Brian Joel here with my second video in a series chronicling my journey into the United States Air Force. In my first video that I uploaded on this account, I talked about my reasons for wanting to join the Air Force, and I also talked about my first meeting with my recruiter. If you did not check that video out, I highly suggest that you watch it. The reason why I say that is because this video series is kind of like the TV show Lost. You have to watch the last episode for the new episode to make any sense, and hell, sometimes on that show, it never made any sense, no matter how many episodes you watch, but I digress. There is a misconception out there among a lot of people that the military will take any and everybody who walk in off the damn street. Like, all you have to do is walk into a recruiter's office, sign a couple of papers, and they'll ship you out on a plane the very next week. That couldn't be further from the truth, seeing as the military actually does have a set of standards, and there's a very detailed process to determine if you even qualify to join the military. And after you meet with your recruiter, the first step in that process is taking the ASVAB test. Now, if you don't know, the ASVAB stands for the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, and it's a test that you have to take no matter what branch of the military you want to join. But the difference is with the respective branches, they all have their own minimum score that you have to either meet or beat to qualify to join that specific branch. And I believe the Air Force, they do have the highest minimum score, meaning our standards are a little bit higher than everybody else's. And my recruiter, he basically told me as long as I get a 50 on the ASVAB, at least a 50, then I'm good to go. So in my last video, I left off with my recruiter setting a date for me to take the ASVAB at MEPS. And MEPS is the Military Entrance Processing Station, and this is basically your gateway into the military. If you're thinking about enlisting and you've never been to MEPS before and you don't know what MEPS is, trust me, you're going to have a lot of time to get acquainted with MEPS because you're going to be spending a whole hell of a lot of time there. So my recruiter gave me the date of April 3rd to take the ASVAB, and I knew how important the ASVAB was. Like, I knew how serious this was, and because in my mind I was thinking, this is the most important day of my entire life. I could seriously make a career out of the Air Force. I could spend the next 20 years of my life in the Air Force. But if I fuck up this test, then that's not going to happen. And I was determined to study. Like, I don't really like to study. Like, in my 4 years of high school, I probably studied, I could count the amount of times I studied at home on one hand in my entire 4 years of high school. And, I graduated as the National Honor Society president, so it wasn't much of a thing to me back then, but this was serious to me. Like, this was like real life. So even before I talked to my recruiter, I headed over to military.com and I took one of the short practice ASVABs. And if you want some sort of idea as to what to expect from the ASVAB, I definitely suggest you guys head over to military.com to check out those practice tests. So I did one of the practice tests and I didn't like my score on it. A couple of sections I completely bombed in, and that reinforced my decision to study. But the thing is, from the time that I took the practice test to the time where I met with my recruiter, somewhere in between that time, my friggin' internet went out. And it was out for a couple of weeks. Like, it ended up being out the day that I was set to take the ASVAB. I was so nervous because I was like, man, the only little bit of studying that I did was with the practice ASVAB, and I really wanted to postpone the date, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and go through with the test anyway. So I headed over to the MEPS facility, and I went up there with my mom because I don't drive at all. Hell, I don't even have a license. I hardly know how to drive. And a little fun fact about me, I piloted an aircraft years before I ever drove a car. True story. Maybe I'll tell you a little more about that, some other time. But so I go up to the MEPS facility with my mom. I walk through the door, and I kid you not, as soon as I walked in the door, before I could even make it to the metal detector, which was just like 3 or 4 feet away from the door, a guy sitting at the desk, he pointed at me and he was like, Air Force. And it kind of caught me off guard. So I'm like, huh? Because it was like so weird because he was talking about me, but he wasn't talking to me. He was talking to people like around him, and he was like, Air Force. And I was like, huh? And he was like, you're an Air Force recruit, right? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, see, I knew it. The Air Force guys always bring their parents. And that had to process in my head for a little bit, and I had to think about it for a second. And I thought to myself in my head, I'm like, he just took a shot at me. Like, as soon as I walk in the damn door, he sees my mom and he takes a shot at me. So I was like, you know what? That was just my first little experience in this friendly banter that goes on between the different branches of the military or whatever. So I head over to the front desk, and the same guy, he was sitting there. He had to do like a biometric scan of my fingerprints and things like that. So I put my thumb on the scanner. It doesn't work. I put my index finger on the scanner. It doesn't work. I put my middle finger on there. And just so happens, that's the one that worked. Like the same guy who took a shot at me when I walked in the door. You know, it takes the middle finger for it to register. But, you know, that was just a little coincidence or whatever. So, you know, I go sit down because I actually got there like 30 minutes early. They sent me to the testing area anyway. And once I got to the testing area, the attendant there, they had to do the whole biometric scan again, like do the fingerprints and all. That's basically a form of ID when you go to MEPS. So every single little section of MEPS that you go to, you're going to have to do the biometric scan there. And it was so funny to me. I was thinking about it in my head. Like, they seriously think that they have to make sure I didn't switch bodies with somebody from the time it took me to get from the front desk to the damn testing area, which was all of 25 feet. But I was like, hey, I don't make the rules here. I just go along with the flow. So they did the whole biometric scan thing, and they sit me down at the desk, and the attendant, he goes over some instructions and stuff like that. And, you know, he starts up the ASVAB, and, you know, for like 5 or 10 minutes, you just go through instruction after instruction after instruction, and it was getting on my damn nerves. Like, of course they have to do that to, you know, make sure nobody has any excuses as to what they were going to do, as if anybody would not know that if you want to pick choice A, click A on the keyboard. But yeah, I guess they have to, you know, disclose all of that very secret information. So you have to go through that. You know, if you believe the answer is A, then click A. If you believe the answer is B, then click B. If you believe the answer is C, then click C. Yeah, so they go to a practice question and they're like, try clicking A on your keyboard. You successfully clicked A. So after all of that, I was getting so tired of it. I just started skimming through it, you know, next. Let's get this damn test started. Let's get this out of the way. I was already, you know, little ticked off a little bit because I didn't have the opportunity to study. So it starts off with the natural science, or at least that's what it started off with me. I was a little nervous about that. I was great at science when I was in high school, but, or key phrase, when I was in high school. I've been out of high school for 5 years, so it's like I was nervous about, you know, that information because it had long left my mind. But, you know, the test starts to roll on, and once you got to the math portion, that's when I was like, I knew I was set, because I absolutely love math. I love numbers, and I breezed all through that algebra, the arithmetic reasoning. That's basically they give you word problems. It's like they add in the problems, the number problems, into sentences and things like that. Like if Brad and Angelina have 15 biological children and then they adopt 95 children, how many children do they have? And, you know, you pick the answer through the multiple choice or whatever. So arithmetic reasoning, I did great in that section. I move on to paragraph comprehension. Once again, my confidence was steadily rising, and I was like, oh yes, this, like, I can't believe I thought this was, you know, that difficult. So I go on, and my confidence is up. It's up. I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a damn thing on this test. Then it gets to the mechanical part and the electrical part, and everything goes to hell. I was seriously at one point in that test looking at the computer screen like this. Like, what is going on here? And I'm pretty sure that was the same question everybody around me was asking too. Like, what is going on here? What the hell is this guy going through? But yeah, it's like I was kicking myself in the behind, because I actually went to a school that specialized in all things aerospace. Like I talked about earlier on in the video how I got the chance to fly airplanes before. That's how, because I was in the pilot's training program at my school, and it also dealt with a lot of other things like aircraft mechanics, and, you know, it dealt with the electrical side of the airplane and all of that stuff. And it's like some of the terms from back then, I remembered the terms, I just didn't remember what the hell they meant. So it was like I had a whole bunch of puzzle pieces there, and I had to try my best to piece all of the little information that I had together to try to get, you know, a solid picture there. So I struggled through all of that, and then they got to this one point where it was like this point in the test where they had these weird shapes and stuff like that, and they have these three options. Like when they put the shapes together, you have to see which one accurately represents all of these shapes, like these jumbled and mumbled shapes. And at that point in the test, I was seriously sitting there studying that stuff. I was thinking like this was a life and death situation. I'm like, I'm not gonna BS on this. I'm gonna get this shit right. And I actually ended up getting a warning on my computer. Like it started to flash red, and an attendant had to come over there, and he had to like put in his key code or whatever to start the test back up. And it was basically a warning saying I was taking too long on one question. And yeah, you do have a time limit for the ASVAB, and don't think that, you know, oh, I have 2 hours to do the test, so I'm gonna breeze through one section and then save my time for the difficult stuff at the end. It does not work like that. You have a set amount of time to each individual component of the test. So it's like you have 15 minutes for one section. You can't go over that time, because if you do, cuts off and they throw you over to the next thing. So you have to make sure you're on top of your game in each individual section, because it's not like you can add up your leftover time at the end. So I slugged through the test, and by the end, they had to end with all the mechanical, electrical stuff, all those stupid ass shapes. And by that time, I was like, I know I messed up on this one. And I felt so defeated at that time. And then I told the guy, the attendant there, I told him I'm finished, and he was like, okay, well, we're gonna have you take one more test for us here today. And I was like, are you serious? I said it in my head. Of course I didn't say it to him. I'm like, are you freaking serious? Like, as hard as this stuff was, like, this was not a part of the deal at all. So he sits me down, he, you know, brings up something else on the computer, and I think it was called like TAPIS or something like that. It was basically a personality assessment, and I swear this was the stupidest thing I've ever taken in my entire friggin' life. Like, you sit there and you have they give you two options, and you basically have to choose one of the options that better fits you as a person. And it was so crazy, because some of the times you're going to get two negative options, and it's stuff like, you know, this is just an example, I like to rob banks, or I steal money out of my grandma's purse. Like, those questions aren't going to actually be on the test, but that's just an example that you wouldn't want to choose either of those, right? But, you know, that's kind of like an example of the stuff that you're going to get from that test. And by the time that I finish with that, the attendant, he's already processed my ASVAB scores, and he's printed them out, and he's like, okay, take this. Do not open this envelope in the building. You can wait until you get out in the parking lot, but do not open this in the building. So I exit the building, get out in the parking lot, and before I opened up the envelope, I was so nervous. My mom was like, okay, what do you think you got on the test? I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of nervous about this, because I actually took the ASVAB twice before in high school, and I got, you know, my scores on that or whatever. And I was thinking to myself, well, I actually told her, I was like, I don't know, because some of the information that I got on there, it was fresh in my mind when I was in high school. So I was thinking, if I got a certain score on the test then, when all of that information was fresh in my mind, there's no way in hell I got higher this time around. Like, it's absolutely impossible. So I open up the envelope, I pull out the little sheet of paper. To my shock and surprise, I got a 90 friggin' 5, a 95. And when you hear people say they got so and so on the ASVAB, that's basically them giving you their AFQT score. So my AFQT score was a 95. And in each individual section for the Air Force, they have mechanical, administrative, general, and electrical. 90 in mechanical, I don't know how, but, you know, hey, I'll take it. 90 in administrative, 97 in general, and 95 in electrical. Again, I don't know how in the hell I got that, because it's like with that part of the test, I remembered the term ohms and amps and the direct current and alternating current. I remembered all of that, but I didn't remember what any of it meant. So, you know, apparently me piecing stuff together, it worked out pretty well. I still got that big picture at the end of the day. So Yeah, I'll definitely take those scores. So that was the end of my ASVAB experience. Next step in the process is all of the paperwork and the dreaded trip to MEPS for the physical, which I will be covering in my next video. Also, if you guys have any questions on the process or questions on me, you want more details on anything, just let me know. Ask the question down in the comment section below. What I'm doing right now is basically just building up the questions, and then I'll address them in a future Q&A video. So if you guys want to see that, plus more to come, make sure you subscribe to this channel, and thank you for watching. Until next time, peace out.